EmMajority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
EmMajority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Thursday, April 13th, 2023. My name is Emma Vigeland, in for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Sarah Brayne, author of Predict and Surveil, Data, Discretion, and the Future of Policing. And later in the show, Donna Murch, Associate Professor of History at Rutgers, President of the New Brunswick chapter of Rutgers AAUP-AFT, on the historic strike at the university. Meanwhile, the Fifth Circuit has partially restored access to the abortion pill drug mifepristone. So, PSA, you can still get it from your doctor as legal challenges continue, just not through the mail. Dianne Feinstein's office says the Judiciary Committee can temporarily replace her amid her health struggles. So, thankfully, the judicial nominating process can proceed. But some of her colleagues have doubts that she'll ever return. Both expelled Tennessee lawmakers have officially been reinstated before a special election for them both. Good trouble. And in Arizona, an election denier was expelled from the state legislature by a bipartisan 2/3 majority led by her fellow Republicans. Biden's progressive nominee for Labor Secretary Julie Su might be sunk by, you guessed it, Joe Manchin. But they could do the Trump model and just let her be acting secretary without a vote. Biden to announce an expanded ACA and Medicaid eligibility for Dreamers. And his recycled Trump border policy, allowing denials of asylum by agents at the border despite that being a violation of international law, thankfully on hold. A huge fire at a plastic facility in eastern Indiana has forced residents to evacuate as toxic smoke spills into the air. DeSantis' team reportedly calling Florida's congressional delegation, begging them not to endorse Trump. Tears in their eyes. Please. Tears everywhere. Begging Ron. The special counsel investigation now reportedly looking into potential fraud in Trump's usage of voter fraud lies to fundraise. Trump will also be questioned in Tish James's civil fraud lawsuit today, under oath. North Dakota has officially banned trans girls and women from female sports. Most important issue in America. The fairness in 4 or 5 swim and track meets. I got into it with some TERFs online last night. I mean, nothing is pissing me off more than that these days. Anyway, the Oklahoma Board of Education considering approving the U.S.'s first religious charter school, meaning it would be funded by taxpayer money. Charter schools are a scourge. And lastly, one of the leaked U.S. intelligence documents indicates that no Russia and Ukraine peace agreement is expected this year. Oh boy, all this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome to the show, everybody. It's an EmMajority Report Thursday. Yes, it is. It's been EmMajority Report all week. Sam back on Monday. Matt back the week after that from his long grand jury process. I am really curious to hear more about it once he can say more. But for now, let's talk a bit more about the ramifications of these extremist abortion rulings politically for the Republican Party. There was a reason that Lindsey Graham was castigated by Republican leadership when, ahead of the midterm election cycle, he proposed a federal limitation on abortion. What was it, a 15-week ban? And that flies directly in the face of what Republicans have been saying for them to achieve their goal. They were lying that this is a states' rights issue. It should be a states' rights issue. States' rights, states' rights, states' rights. If your state decides you can have an abortion, it's fine. We just want to leave it up to the states. And then Lindsey Graham goes, actually, here's my federal guideline. And he was trying to appear like some sort of modern in the wake of the 6-week bans in other states. And it backfired tremendously. The Republican fixation on trans people didn't outweigh the overwhelming support for abortion rights in the country. And the Republicans wildly underperformed in the midterm election cycle when a lot of people were pissed off about abortion. And not many people care about limiting trans people's rights that much. And so they had to go back to the drawing board, and they're in this kind of difficult situation with the issue of abortion, including presidential hopefuls like Tim Scott, who apparently has a presidential campaign page already set up. This researcher Tyson Brody found it, and it's fascinating. Here's what Tyson found. So this is kind of funny, he writes. Looks like Tim Scott remade his campaign website for the presidential launch. That's typical, but now he no longer has the Protect Life section on his campaign issues page. Interestingly enough, now that's gone, but Tyson was able to verify it via the Wayback Machine. Now, listen to Tim Scott squirm here in this interview with CBS. Again, for a national audience, you'll see shortly how when he speaks to South Carolina residents, sorry? New Hampshire. Oh, New Hampshire? Oh, it was New Hampshire, not domestic. Okay, gotcha. When he speaks in New Hampshire, I thought that was to his home state, different local news station. To New Hampshire, for a more tailored audience, it differs a little bit. But here he is on CBS being asked directly about his colleague, the other senator from his state, Lindsey Graham, and the abortion bill that he proposed that would federalize a ban on abortion at 15 weeks.
You have talked a lot about your faith on the campaign trail as well. I want to ask you about your stance on whether the federal government should be involved in regulating abortion. Your colleague from South Carolina, Lindsey Graham, has a bill to limit abortions at 15 weeks, federal restriction. Do you support that measure?
Yeah, so I would say this, that I am certainly 100% pro-life, without any question. I've been very, very clear about that, very consistent about that. I do think we spend not enough time understanding how far the far left has gone on the issue of abortion. The Senate Democrats have voted for late-term abortions well into the third trimester, some even suggesting that we should have abortion up until the day of birth.
Okay, pause
the fact that
That's a lie. That is a conspiracy theory. Any abortion that is late term is when the mother's health is in question and the child is dying, has died, or not, I shouldn't even say child, fetus has died or has major health complications that would put both of their lives at risk. Late term abortions need to exist because when they happen, it is because the life of the mother is in jeopardy. And Democrats are not proposing up to the day of birth, killing a baby right there. It's ridiculous. Keep going.
We are one of a handful of countries that allows for late-term abortions is a challenging predicament for us to be in.
But in order to solve that, do you think the federal government should be involved with something like what Lindsey Graham is proposing?
Yeah, there's no question that we're going to have lots of folks talk about legislation from a federal perspective, but what I've heard so far and what I've seen in the Senate aren't proposals, but those from the left trying to figure out how to continue their campaign towards late-term abortions, even allowing abortions based on the gender of the child or the race of the child or the disabilities of the child.
But as president, if you were president, would you advocate for federal limits?
Yeah. So once again, I'm 100% pro-life, and I do believe that. No, that's not what I said. I do believe that we should have a robust conversation about what's happening on a very important topic. There's no doubt that when I'm sitting in a banking hearing, having a conversation about financial issues, and you have the Secretary of the Treasury, Janet Yellen, talking about young, poor African-American women having abortions to increase their labor force participation rate, I was stunned into silence. So while the underlying issue is so incredibly important, how we solve that problem is by getting everybody to the table and having that conversation.
Oh, gotcha. So he just went with, abortion is eugenics. Abortion's eugenics of black people. That's an old trope. Thank you, Tim Scott.
So again, like traumatic brain injury, a corner here. I read like Punchbowl News and Political Playbook every morning just to like see what the swamp is talking about. Mm-hmm. And all of their coverage of like Tim Scott's potential presidential campaign is like he's gonna be like, maybe they'll see if, of course he's at 1% now, but like what if he's the temperature lowerer that gets people on board? He's such a nice guy, great story. Like grew up where his parents were descendants of the Jim Crow South, and he became a self-made businessman and Republican. Okay, what we're seeing here in terms of actual practice is this guy just basically speaking very calmly while being like, we need to have compromise on these issues, but also the woke is the mind virus.
Yes.
Do you understand?
But he's saying it with a kind cadence. He's saying what Kanye said about abortions on the presidential, on his presidential race, how it was designed to kill black people in mass. He's just saying it with a softer tone, and he's wearing a suit. But here he is to New Hampshire media speaking about this same issue, and he gives a bit of a different answer. Now, obviously, this is him trying to grease the wheels for his presidential race in an important state. Here we go.
I think states have to solve that problem on their own. The big problem that we see today is that our Democrats want to make this a federal issue of having abortions into the third trimester. That is something that puts us in the company of China and North Korea. We cannot go there. So we have to have a federal limit on how far we can go, and that is something that we have to discuss.
Now, the Congress has passed, I think in 2013, as you would know, 2015, 2017, a late-term abortion ban. That could conceivably go all the way through now. So if that 20-week ban reached your desk, would you sign it?
20-week ban, definitely.
So there you go. There you go. 20-week federal abortion ban. But it's the Democrats that are trying to federalize this issue, even though there's only two of us, two senators from this state, South Carolina. Lindsey Graham proposed the 15-week ban very publicly, and he's trying to steer the conversation away from it because he's towing the party line, and they don't want to emphasize it. But then when he's speaking to local news, 20-week ban. I'm a little less extreme than Lindsey Graham, but, I'm going to federalize this issue.
I'll do a federal 20-week ban, but also when Janet Yellen comes into my hearing room nagging me about the wokeness in abortions, I'm gobsmacked. My jaw hits the floor.
I did not expect the Janet Yellen nagging angle, Bradley, but that was a good one. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break, but first we have a word from one of our favorite sponsors. I'm sure everyone's going to enjoy this. The only spring cleaning job you don't need to glove up for, baby. Hello Tushy Bidets. Yes, they clean up your dirty work the easy way. Just sit, poop, and turn the knob for the most pristine bum of your life without any hand-to-high-knee contact. Hello Tushy Bidet cleans your bum 2 times better than wiping and prevents poop particles from spreading to your hands and everything you touch. It attaches to your existing toilet, requiring no electricity or additional plumbing, and cuts toilet paper use by 80%. Hello Tushy Bidets pay for themselves in the first few months. Now, in all seriousness, yeah, like the Hello Tushy guys, they're trying to troll me at this point with some of this, but we were just playing a clip on Fox News of them pretending that the wokes are coming for your toilet paper with bidets because environmentalists love bidets. I mean, it is more environmentally friendly. It's putting aside the Fox News craziness. So this is just a small thing that you can do to reduce your carbon footprint, and it's just more effective. Every Hello Tushy bidet attachment comes with a 60-day risk-free guarantee and a 12-month warranty. Again, it attaches to your existing toilet, requires no electricity or additional plumbing, and cuts toilet paper use by 80%. With over 100,000 five-star reviews, see why millions of people already love Hello Tushy, and they want to be a part of taking care of business the cleaner way. Go to hellotushy.com/majority and use promo code majority to get 10% off plus free shipping on your first bidet order. That's hellotushy.com/majority for 10% off. Hello, TUSHY.com/majority. Use the promo code majority to get 10% off and free shipping on your first bidet order. This is an investment in yourself and an investment in your pocketbook, because you won't have to go to the store, get all that toilet paper all the time with Hello Tushy. Again, that's hellotushy.com/majority for 10% off. Now a word from Sam and Seder Seeds, and when we come back, we'll be joined by Sarah Brayne.
Hey, folks! This one of today's sponsor is a product that it came out of an experiment that I did when a buddy of mine gave me some cannabis seeds, and I planted them, and they grew into big plants, but I didn't sex them properly. Apparently, there's male and female cannabis plants, and when you don't sex them, what you get at the end of that process is a bunch of seeds. But my loss, your gain, because my buddy was like, we can sell these. These are great seeds. So if you go to Cedars Seeds, SEDERS seeds.com, you can purchase a packet, 6 seeds. Check your local regulations, see if you're allowed to do, outdoor growing, your own growing. Some places you can, some places you can't. In New York, you can. 6 plants, and check it out. If you use the coupon code SEEDS, you're not only going to get the special Majority Report 15% discount that we got running right now, you'll also get free shipping. So check it out, cedarsseeds.com. Oh, and use that. Use that. You can just put your phone right up on that. Check it out.
Back.
We are back, and we are joined now by Sarah Brayne, Assistant Professor of Sociology at the University of Texas at Austin, author of Predict and Surveil, Data, Discretion, and the Future of Policing. Sarah, thanks so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So your book is broadly about the police state, and its increasing encroachment on our digital footprint and mass surveillance in mass, essentially. But what I loved about your work and what makes it so unique is that you were in the field with the LAPD for 5 years, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't 5 years straight, but yeah, it was over the course of 5 years, pretty intensively for about 2.5 years. I was there sort of doing observations and interviews with individuals there.
So, I mean, what was behind your focus on the LAPD in particular? And I know that your field is sociology, so field work's incredibly important. But, was that really central to the story that you wanted to tell?
Yeah. So, I mean, broadly, I was interested in how, big data, predictive analytics, artificial intelligence was being adopted by the police, because it's being adopted by folks in a whole range of institutions, right? Like education and finance, sports, everything. And so I wanted to pick a law enforcement agency that was pretty technologically advanced, kind of like on the front lines of some of this stuff. And so, perhaps unsurprisingly, I narrowed down my potential field sites to the LAPD, Chicago PD, and NYPD. They have the biggest budgets. They're the most technologically advanced. And while they're using big data in different ways, I thought that there would be interesting findings regardless of what agency I did the field work with. And I settled on the LAPD because of the level of access that I was able to get. And so I was, able to go on ride-alongs with individuals in cop cars and interview sworn officers and civilian employees in a whole bunch of divisions, like area and specialized divisions from, robbery, homicide, juvenile, fugitive warrants, information technology division, records and identification, all of that kind of thing. So it really was, I was relatively agnostic as to which exact department I would do, but I just really wanted to pick one that might kind of show us the direction policing is heading, and what smaller agencies might look like.
Yeah, Sarah, just I think your mic's hitting your clothes or your hair a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. And you sound good. Just a little bit of scratching that should be fixed now.
Thanks.
Yeah. So I mean, the LAPD in terms of some of the work that you were able to do and the access that you got, what drove them giving you the level of access that was so helpul to your research compared to, how did you realize that I was going to get the best dragnet, to use their term, or the best research opportunity here? Was it because of some of the kind of infrastructure put in place post Rodney King where there is a lot of logging?
Yeah, I mean, so you raise an interesting point, right? And that is basically that this kind of research is a form of surveillance in itself. So it gets kind of meta that I'm surveilling the surveillors in order to say something about surveillance. But but yeah, so the LAPD did adopt a lot of data intensive or data driven decision making practices, largely in the wake of, the 1990s was a bad decade for the LAPD, right? You raised Rodney King, but there were also all of these civil rights violations unrelated to that. And so they were under a consent decree. Basically, they were sued by the feds and said, look, in exchange for the withdrawal of a criminal charge, you need to comply by all of these standards. And a lot of that had to do with using data, numbers and stuff, instead of just biased or human discretionary decision making in order to make decisions. So that's part of why they are kind of a leader, on the front lines of this use of technology. In terms of why they gave me the access that I did, I mean, it's difficult to ever know people's motivations or intentions. And I definitely did not have summary access to the department when I started the field work. It all just started with one meeting and then one ride along. And then I just did, what we call snowball sampling, really just asking more and more people, spending more and more time there. But I think part of it was that a lot of folks in the department are very proud of how technologically advanced they are, and my questions were can you show me all of the cool stuff you can do with data, how technologically advanced you are. And so I think it kind of depends on where you're coming from, normatively, ideologically, politically, how you understand or make sense of these types of tools and findings. But from their perspective, I mean, it's a good thing.
Yes, and I would say, look, we're a progressive news show. That's a major cause for concern here, obviously. So I want to now dive a little bit deeper. You in your book, differentiate between dragnet surveillance, which I alluded to earlier, and directed, and how basically, post 9/11, we know because of the Snowden revelations that there was a lot of national dragnet surveillance in the United States. Yes. You kind of uncover how that's happening with these major police departments at the local municipal level, but in a huge city like Los Angeles.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're exactly right. Post 9/11, there was this huge influx in federal funds into increased surveillance. But the people who are really on the ground collecting that data day to day, a lot of it is local law enforcement agencies. And then they send that information up to fusion centers, which are these, typically federally funded multi-agency, multidisciplinary surveillance organizations. that aggregate all this information, and then they make that available to the feds, that information available to the feds. So these fusion centers, they were created in the wake of 9/11, largely because the terrorist attacks were viewed as like a case of information sharing failure in the intelligence community. And so they said, okay, look, if we can get all of the information that on the ground local law enforcement is collecting, make it available to the feds, they're sort of on the front lines of the war against domestic terror. And so it began sort of as this like federal counterterror thing, but then there's this concept called function creep, right? The idea that like data originally collected for one purpose can be increasingly used for another. And so then local law enforcement is like, hey, we can start using this data too for our local policing.
Right. And that's kind of how all policing works, right? The reason that police have access to advanced weaponry and you see glorified tanks rolling through people's hometowns is because
like the pumpkin festival in New Hampshire and all that.
It's because a lot of the excess kind of militarized weaponry then it gets turned on you domestically. Whatever militarism the United States is engaging in abroad, I mean, like frankly, we're seeing this is beyond the scope of your research, but we're seeing this with Israel right now, where they are the fascism is coming home, and what they've inflicted on the Palestinians, what we did in the war on terror came into our own police departments, and it accelerated a lot of the abuses that like have become notorious, obviously.
I think the militarization story, I'm trying to shed light on this kind of hidden part of that, which is, like you said, there's been some good coverage of the militarization of police in terms of local police departments getting access to surplus military kit, like the military hardware, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that a really important and pretty invisible part of this story is also the creep of military software, right? Like data and surveillance technologies originally created for, counterinsurgency, counterterrorism efforts in Iraq and Afghanistan, then being deployed in the local context, like you're saying. And a lot of the time that's not as visible as like a tank rolling down the street or, responding with military gear to protests or something like that. But I think it's still a very important part of the story because it imports that like military logic, that counterinsurgent logic into local policing.
What were some of the examples off the top of your head that you saw of that logic and how kind of casually it's deployed?
Yeah, well, I mean, so I think like a classic example is the use of this platform designed by Palantir Technologies. So Palantir, okay, so you guys probably talk about that. So anyway, for those who don't know, Palantir is this like data integration platform, has all kinds of, government and commercial customers. Okay. Initially funded by In-Q-Tel, which is the CIA's venture capital friend. Anyway, they create this data integration platform where you can combine all of these previously disparate sources of data. It was originally created for, counter-terror efforts in Iraq and Afghanistan, like I was saying. And now that is sort of the platform that the LAPD uses to integrate disparate sources of data. So everything from, 911 calls to automatic vehicle or automatic license plate reader readings. That's an example of a dragnet surveillance tool. You don't have to have done anything wrong, committed any crime in order to have your car picked up by these automatic license plate readers that are all over the city. And so in this platform, then you have understandings of the distribution of people in a city, and you can build out these like social networks, for example, and create, risk scores of people that are more or less likely to commit crime in the future. And so I think it's really like the importation and deployment of these tools. This is like one of the vectors through which we're finding this playing out in the local law enforcement context.
Right. I mean, and it also it's the I guess it was Foucault who wrote about the surveillance tower within prisons.
Yeah, the panopticon.
There we go.
Yeah.
I haven't thought about that since college.
I know. I was like college. Let's
let's tap back into that moment. But that's what that is, right? It's the nature of pre-crime, and how you constantly feel like you're under surveillance because the reality is that people aren't aware of this in the way they should be, and that's why your book is so important. But that's the philosophy of policing behind this kind of stuff.
I think so. I think it's so. I mean, like surveillance scholars love to get in arguments about Foucault or whatever, which I will not get into here to like totally bore your your listeners and your
We're
viewers.
very dry over here. Don't worry.
But yeah, basically, I think that, okay, so the way the panopticon thing works is that then the logic is that people start to police themselves, right? Because they don't know if the guy in the central tower is looking at them and policing them or not. So it's like this very efficient use of power. I think there's some of that going on with this, the electronic panopticon, if you will. But also, I think part of its power of like electronic surveillance is this invisibility that it can seep into our lives. We don't know what digital traces are like. But no, I do think it is definitely a useful metaphor. This idea of omnipresent surveillance, like all these digital traces we leave in the course of our everyday lives, perhaps no one of them we would take issue with the police having access to, right? It's like, oh, you write something in the public domain on the internet, or you make some purchase or whatever, fine. But what legal scholars and lawyers are really up in arms about is this idea that the aggregation of all of these little digital traces that we leave grants the government a level of insight into our lives that totally previously would have constituted a search, and therefore like had these legal requirements or thresholds that must be met. But now that's just like not the case in the digital world.
Yeah, I mean, it one of the constitutional erosions that does not get discussed enough is just the complete erosion of the Fourth Amendment. Every time over the 20th century, the case law on that front, and then this is really beyond the scope of your book, but like the case law on that front is it pretty much universal every time in giving police more discretion. For a drug dog to come up to a crack in your front door and smell, and that doesn't constitute a search. For reasonable suspicion in the way that people are driving around in their cars. All of this has been throughout the ideology changes on the Supreme Court, been a fairly universal kind of push towards giving police a lot of this. And then there's the stuff that we don't know about that you write, which is like the August Vollmer guy that you speak about here, who had military background in the Philippines. Talk a bit about that, because that's also bringing that seems like a great example of the military mentality seeping into the policing in cities that you discuss.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and you know what, there is a great book coming out that's a lot about this Vollmer guy by someone named Julian Go at the University of Chicago soon. It's all about imperialism and policing and stuff. Anyway, so future potential guests, but yeah, right. So like, I guess Vollmer, he was the chief of police in Berkeley, and he's kind of considered like the father of modern policing. And yep, indeed, he was sort of deployed in the Philippines. He was doing this policing, and he brought back a lot of the like we were saying, sort of technologies and logics, like the idea of pin mapping, right? Plotting in different places where things were occurring in order to predict where they were more likely to occur in the future and send their resources. The resources are slightly different in the local law enforcement context than they would have been like in imperial Philippines, but it's sort of like the same type of counterinsurgency thing. And so it was really a combination of like both the actual technologies, call boxes, the use of like being able to communicate between people on the front and central command, right? And of course, local law enforcement agencies, like they mirror the military in their organizational structure and in their chain of command. And so I think it's like a relatively easy importation strategy that occurs there.
Right. And I guess that was going back a little bit in history, but to keep it to our current moment, I'm curious what if you could expand a little bit more on the tech companies that are so intertwined with the LAPD. You mentioned Palantir and how they use those kinds of tools. Palantir is a Peter Thiel company as well, and he has dipped his toe in a lot of like technological services, and works with the government in particular. I think he also was trying to do stuff along the border. But what is that dynamic of police working with capitalists to further their technological advances?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of motivations for why this is an effective thing for the police to do. So on the one hand, a lot of the time, police departments just don't have the relevant in-house expertise, right? Technology is becoming more advanced. so what they do is they contract out or hire private companies in order to design some of the key analytic platforms that they use. And, I would go to these like surveillance industry conferences in DC, for example, which was super interesting because what I thought I was going to see was local law enforcement agencies, like police departments, going to tech firms and being like, hey, these are particular needs that we have. Can you build some software or platform that helps us with this? That was like mostly not what I saw. In fact, it was like the surveillance companies saying, hey, like check out how our platform is used in Iraq or in Afghanistan. Like, isn't this fascinating? Or for dealing with like piracy, and like these different like maritime fronts and whatnot. Maybe you want to use that to catch bad guys in your city. And so it was this kind of like inverse of what I thought the supply demand thing was going to be. So anyway, first, they don't have the in-house expertise. Second, I mean, you brought up the Fourth Amendment and whatnot. There are more laws and regulations on what the government can do, like what government agencies can do, which, police departments are one of, in terms of like intrusion into individuals' lives, data they can collect. So by relying on private companies a lot of the time to just collect some of these data and then they just buy it from them, local law enforcement just buys it from them through data brokers, right? Like LexisNexis, for example, which the LAPD, again, accesses through a portal in Palantir. They can circumvent a lot of these like legal and regulatory and reporting requirements that come with like public agencies collecting.
Right. It's like a client. It's a client relationship as opposed to a public service one.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, hey, like we don't want to really get into this legally contestable territory or have this fought in court. So like, why don't we just buy it from somebody else?
It's just amazing. I mean, what were some of the police officers' reactions to this? You hinted at the fact that a lot of them were really impressed by the scope of the technology and the capacity, but you also spend a lot of time with LAPD officers. What was their kind of some of the experiences that you had when you asked them about a lot of this?
Yeah, so I think that there was generally this pervasive idea, not uniformly, there was variation within the department, but this pervasive idea of like, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. Like, if you haven't done anything wrong, then why do you care if the police are collecting data on you? And, okay, I understand that logic. However, it was really interesting to me, like on my very first ride along, we were responding to a 911 call, like a call for service about a possible break-in at this like abandoned house, or it was under construction or something. Anyway, and in the cop car, the sergeant pulls up to this address and types in manually to his in-car computer that he's code 6 at a particular address, meaning like we'd arrived at the scene. And in that moment, I was like, oh my God, I picked the LAPD because I thought they were so technologically advanced. Like, why does this guy have to manually type in his location in his computer? Is there not like some automated mechanism for the department tracking or knowing where the vehicles are? So I asked him about it. And he said, oh yeah, every car is equipped with an AVL or an automatic vehicle locator that pings the location of the car every 5 seconds, but they're not turned on because of resistance from the police officers. And so it was in that second that I was like, well, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear, right? Like this, There's this like cognitive dissonance, kind of like that logic just disappeared in their sense making when applied to them, because a collateral consequence of a lot of this digital policing is that the police are coming under increased surveillance by their managers. And so, yeah, it was just like a really interesting moment of resistance. And then I saw other examples of that in my field work. But I think generally that's their response is like, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. But then when it actually plays out, it looks a bit different.
Yeah, I'm curious too about the role of body cam footage in the way that some of these officers respond, because I printed this out because I knew I was having you on today. I read this yesterday. It was this Cal Matters article. I mean, we don't need to go into it, but it was about this like cottage industry now of video editors who are putting out the body cam footage to the public, but it's very particular. And it struck a chord with me given what you had said there, that anecdote in particular, where it's like body cam footage is supposed to be about transparency, but how do we have oversight as to like what we're even seeing?
Yeah, I mean, and there is no like at the federal level regulations about the collection, the storage, the publication of any. It is like the regulatory Wild West. So much variation. For the most part, it's typically still expecting the police to police themselves, unless a case makes it up to higher courts, et cetera. But yeah, I mean, the body cam thing, they were basically being rolled out while I was in the field. So I don't really have like a systematic account of their use in the book. But I think that like a lot of the same dynamics are at play here. And the way that I really talk about data in the book, if you think about like body cam footage being a form of data, right, is that like we shouldn't think of data as just some sort of like objective reflection of reality. Yes. Rather, it's like interpreted through prisms and power structures and all of this stuff. It's like a form of capital, right? And so if this body cam footage is only available to local law enforcement agencies or to sort of police themselves, I think its potential to like increase transparency and accountability is like pretty limited. It has to be drastic changes in ownership of these data and, you know, access to these data if you actually want to have that meaningful change.
Yes. But I mean, the change probably has to come from the outside, or the desire for it.
Yes.
I mean, we see this in the context of politics when we're talking about algorithms. Like we have made data into some sort of a pagan god that that is all knowing and not influenced by humanity, and it's a construction of humanity, so that's literally impossible.
No, absolutely. I mean, you said it well. It's sort of like it's a construction in a way. Absolutely. And, you know, we really see this playing out in the context of predictive policing, like with the police, right? So police do predictive policing where they use predictive algorithms in order to predict where and who is likely to be involved in crime in the future. And then they send cops to those areas. Mm-hmm. And so the LAPD, you know, uses a predictive policing algorithm designed by, it used to be called Predpol, now it's called Geolytica. It's basically one of the biggest predictive policing software companies in the world. And they take historical crime data and then spit out basically this 500 square foot box of where crime is likely to occur. And then the police go to that area and such. Now, what ends up happening, right, though, is kind of this like self-fulfilling prophecy wherein, okay, well, the police are more likely to go to that area. Well, then they can become more likely to detect crime in that area or observe crime in that area, which then feeds into the predictive policing algorithm and then tells them to spend more time in this area. So it can become kind of this like feedback loop or ratchet effect.
Yeah.
And
it's
but it comes across as like objective, right?
Yes.
And like detached from these social processes, right? One officer referred to it as just math, right? And it's like, no, it's not just math. It is all, you know, algorithms are you know, not just like detached or purely descriptive. It's people situated within these like pre-existing organizational contexts and social contexts that collect data and decide what data to collect and analyze about whom and for what purpose and what to do with the data, you know? So I think sometimes in some of the like RoboCop type analogies, that really, really important human role can kind of get lost or fade away. You know, it's like, oh,
it's
we're policed by computers. It's like, no, it's actually people just using computers.
It's the same thing they always did, going and policing poor Black neighborhoods, but now they just have data that tells them to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, I don't love it creates plausible deniability as opposed to kind of more of a robust understanding.
Well, and I'm interested to, see how it's thought about in courts in coming years, right? Like we have this pacing problem with tech where technology happens so much faster, technological advancement happens so much faster than laws and regulations that govern it. So, you know, I think it'll be like 10, 15 years in the Supreme Court, we'll be seeing this kind of stuff. But like, absolutely, I think that it will be litigated and debated. You know, it's like, did you stop this guy because of his risk score or whatever? So,
right. Yeah. Well, Sarah Brayne, the book, Predict and Surveil, Data, Discretion, and the Future of Policing won the Surveillance Studies Network's 2021 Book Award. So it's a big deal. I'd encourage everybody to buy it if they can. Check it out. Sarah, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. We'll put a link to your book in the description everywhere you're watching or listening to this, and at majority.fm.
Thanks so much.
Of course. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to be speaking with Donna Murch of Rutgers. We are back, and we are joined by Donna Murch, Associate Professor of History at Rutgers, President of the New Brunswick chapter of Rutgers AAUP-AFT, which is the union representing the full-time faculty, grad workers, postdoc associates, and counselors. And Donna is also the chair of the union's BIPOC caucus. Donna, thank you so much for coming on, and what a t-shirt. I'm so glad we get to see it.
Thank you. You can see I've positioned myself in order to show off our union logo.
I love it. I love it. So
this became the union logo in 2014 when we had a new generation of union leadership.
Yeah, I mean, and you're holding a pencil right there with that. That's amazing. I love to see it. So I look, I'm from New Jersey, so Rutgers is. We both are actually. Myself and my producer. Rutgers is an institution, obviously, and this strike is historic. The fact that you guys have come together with 3 unions, and it's around 9,000 workers banding together to stand up to the university. Like, how did this decision come about, and how were you all able to kind of come together and show, as your shirt says, solidarity with one another?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Sure. What's emerged at Rutgers is the Coalition of Rutgers Unions, and it dates directly back to the pandemic. So you had alliances of all the unions at Rutgers. There are a lot of them. There are 24. And since the early 2000s, they would bargain together, sometimes on healthcare, where there were shared interests. So they were like a loose confederation. But it was during the pandemic, when 5% of the workforce was laid off, that we came together largely on Zoom meetings to organize to stop the layoffs. When people were laid off, they lost their health insurance. So we all remember what it was like for New Jersey in 2020, those first months. So I think the UN coalition, honestly, is something beautiful that came out of something very difficult. So in order to prevent more layoffs, the Rutgers AAUP-AFT, which is one of the unions, chose its own form of structured furloughs that were funded by the Department of Labor. And it was our way of saying, we will come together in solidarity to do a structured furlough if you agree not to lay off any more workers by January until after January 1st, 2022, which meant that if anyone was laid off at that time, they would be able to keep their health insurance until the end of the year. So that's where the union coalition came from.
Right. And then what happened when that kind of ask was brought to the university?
We won.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
And not only did we win preventing any layoffs, we also won the first graduate extension at a public university, which meant that graduate students weren't able to do research, labs, and archives were shut down. And so it was a real crisis that their time to degree is continuing, the clock is still ticking, but they're unable to do research. And so we won a grad extension. So that's the prehistory. That happened last year, but that explains the strength and the power of the protests that you're seeing. I would describe that as the arc of how we got to where we are now.
Gotcha. And now we're in this moment. The strike started on Monday. Not again, as I said, over 9,000 employees, workers, banding together and standing up to a university president who, I mean, again, you guys are in the middle of bargaining. I know that this is a touchy subject, but like he was making claims in the lead up to the strike that this was illegal. I'm pretty sure it's not. I haven't been able to find a New Jersey statute that would show that it is. Like, what was your reaction to the university president coming out and saying that so aggressively?
I'd say this was my reaction, and also everyone that I talked to, every undergraduate and faculty member, was shock and disappointment. Especially because Jonathan Holloway is a historian, and his first book was about Black class relations and labor intellectuals and left liberals in the 1930s. But to misrepresent New Jersey in that way, here we are in a deep blue state that is friendly to organized labor, to say that public sector strikes are illegal, I mean, it's disinformation. To explain the specific reason that he's wrong is that when public sector workers go on strike, police do not come to arrest them. They do not say, you're breaking the law, this is a strike. What happens is the employer decides to go to a judge to see if he can get a court injunction, a cease and desist order. If he gets that, he or she comes back and then informs the striking workers of it, and they refuse, then he has to go back to ask for penalties. In other words, fines on the union, arrests, or individually levered fines. So the important thing about this is that the agency is with the employer to seek the court injunction. But to categorically say that public sector strikes are illegal in New Jersey is wrong. And there have been instances where injunctions have been used, sadly, against often K through 12 public school teachers in different municipalities. And the good thing about this discussion happening is that I think as labor and as people who care about workers, we need to come together and pass protective legislation in New Jersey so this does not, that people do not misrepresent the nature of public sector employment in New Jersey.
100%. I mean, I was just arguing on the show the other day. Now I'm in Brooklyn, and I wish that New York City had the strength or had the institutional strength that the Chicago Teachers Union does, because every state in this country would benefit from teachers unions having more power. And that would obviously, I think, affect all the way up to public university workers like yourself and the other 9,000 strikers that you've come together with.
Absolutely. And I will just say, I have to write a little love letter to New Jersey.
Yeah.
Tickets. There are thousands of people. And when I was there yesterday, the majority of them were undergraduates. So what's happening at Rutgers is very, very special. We have huge undergraduate support and participation. New Jersey is a place where class matters, and people care about their public institutions.
I mean, I saw that photo that was circulated by your colleague of the Deke frat guys. We actually showed it on the show on Tuesday, raising their fists in solidarity. I mean, look, I went to college with a lot of Greek life. I mean, and that was, gosh, it was, that level of class solidarity at I went to private college, Lafayette. I could not have seen that happening. But even like in the years following, I just think that the consciousness of young people about the importance of solidarity behind labor has exploded. And to see that is so encouraging. I'm sure for you guys, that must have been a real, like some wind behind your sails.
Absolutely. It's really moving to me. I taught at Rutgers for 20 years, and I was there yesterday with some faculty who have been there 20 or 30 years. And we all wanted to lay down new memories, because this is one of the most profound things that any of us, we all agree this is the most profound thing we have ever seen happen at Rutgers. And to feel that sense of strength and solidarity, I will say that the scale of undergraduate solidarity also has to do with the nature of the union demands, which are not traditional wage demands that benefit the most elite workers. Instead, it's targeting the most vulnerable workers, which are part-time lecturers and graduate students. And the students are very aware that these people are an important part of the teaching faculty. So they care about their professors, and they've been upset for a long time about the starvation pay of adjuncts and graduate students. That's one piece. And the second one is, and I do think that we are still in the process of negotiation, but I am very hopeful that we're going to win our important undergraduate demands, some of them, including a $15 minimum wage minimum for undergraduates, the forgiveness of fines, fees, and debt relief that's preventing students from being able to re-enroll if they're carrying debt, and to receive their diplomas. And that is so powerful. So I think there's also a recognition that, following the Chicago Teachers Union, our working conditions are our students' learning conditions. And we're using our power as multiple job categories, including the tenure stream faculty that have tenure protections, to organize and to fight for more vulnerable workers who don't have those same protections, put it like that.
Right. So in terms of the central demands, you mentioned the pay there. What are some of the things that you guys are putting at the forefront in the midst of your negotiations with the university?
Okay, so the first one is that part-time lecturers who are paid piecemeal by class and have to have their contracts renewed every semester. So you'll have people that have worked at Rutgers for 20 years, but they don't know until late August or early January, just often days, sometimes once the semester has already started, whether they have contracts. So greater job security for part-time lecturers and linking their pay directly to that of the non-tenure track full-time faculty. It's called a fractional appointment. So it's the idea that we're going to get rid of this completely sweated contingent class of labor that's being paid anywhere. At Rutgers, I think that the adjunct pay was around $5,100 per class pre-tax. So stopping that and allowing them to get the full recognition that they deserve. Okay, that's one. Two is a living wage for graduate students, extremely important. Rutgers wages right now are 30 for the graduate students, around 30,000, and the estimate that a living wage in New Jersey is 48,000. So this is an essential wage demand. We all know how expensive New Jersey is between Philadelphia and New York. And then the third one sounds technical, but it's really important. It's the recognition of graduate student fellowship recipients. So fellowships are what you receive when you are doing your graduate studies or doing research, not only working as a teaching assistant or a grad assistant, making sure that this class of graduate workers is recognized as part of the union bargaining unit so that we can bargain on their health insurance and on their pay to make sure that there's equity across the board, not only for teaching assistants and for graduate assistants, but also for students that have received fellowships to complete their degrees. And it in it itself is a form of academic labor. I would say that that is a theme that runs throughout the union demands, which is paying, protecting, and equalizing job conditions for the most vulnerable and lowest paid, but also really insisting that the university focus on teaching, research, and service to the communities. Finally, I would say is the bargaining, at the top of the list, or the bargaining for the common good demands. And I mentioned some of them for the undergraduates, but we also have them for the communities in which Rutgers is located that are heavily Black and Brown communities, new immigrant. So making sure that that Rutgers is serving those communities versus this relationship where, because the university is there, it drives up rents very, very high. And so it makes it difficult for these communities.
Gotcha. All right. Well, that's helpful to know. Thanks for laying that out. I just a few more questions for you, and then I'll let you go. I'm sure you're in the midst of a very busy time, but I know it's delicate. But what's your assessment so far of the role that Governor Phil Murphy has played in these negotiations? Because he was kind of publicly saying, I'm going to be on top of this. It seemed like a good development that he said, no legal action can be taken by the university. That seems ridiculous. That's just my, I'm not deep in this, but I'm curious if you have anything that you'd be comfortable sharing about your feelings there.
Yeah. Well, right now our bargaining team is in Trenton in the governor's mansion, literally working around the clock. I went to bed at about 11:30 last night, and as far as I know, they were still working. There was the possibility that they were going to be expected to work through the night, which is really hard, that kind of bargaining. So I do think that with the governor intervening, this is the first time that we've really had substantive responses to our counter proposals. We had been without a contract for 286 days, and there were many proposals that we submitted in May, including the grad articles, that had received no response until very recently. So just the presence and intervention of the governor has been crucial, in addition to his, deal, you would call it, or his insistence that Jonathan Holloway not attempt to go get an injunction to criminalize the strike. I think these kinds of negotiations are complex, but we remain very hopeful, and there's been some movement on economic demands that matter a lot.
Okay, good to know. Lastly, if our viewers want to support your guys' efforts, what's the best way that they can? Is there a website? Or, I know obviously if you're in Jersey, around the New Brunswick area, you can come out and show support, but any recommendations?
Okay, yes, I definitely have some. It's very important to reach out to the governor's office. People need to signal in New Jersey how much they care about what's happening at Rutgers, which is one of the biggest employers, and what the strike means in terms of the right of public employees. So I think I would put that at the very top of the list, like phone calls, letters, emails, tweets, really talking about how important they are. The second thing is we do have a strike fund, and you can go to the website of the Rutgers AAUP-AFT, and you'll see it right away. Third is come to our pickets. One of the things that has been amazing, really moving, because we have people of all ages, all colors, every different type of job and person. A lot of people from the AFL-CIO, the Central Labor Council, as well as the labor councils of individual counties. And that to me has just been amazing, like meeting all these workers on the picket lines. Also, they come to the union hall to see what's happening and to get t-shirts and posters. So really come out with us and picket with us. They're amazing, thousands of people, and there's a lot of programming during these pickets. They're not only speeches and talks, but they're performances. It's a way to really get that flavor of what a kind of special place that New Jersey is and Rutgers is. Lots of talent and lots of goodwill and solidarity.
Well, awesome. Bradley right now is pulling up your website. I just wanted to show it for the audience. We'll also be putting a link to this in the podcast, YouTube, and descriptions, and also at majority.fm. It's Rutgers AAUP.org, and you can go there and help out with the strike fund. So thank you so much for your time today. Donna Murch, Associate Professor of History at Rutgers, President of the New Brunswick chapter of the Rutgers AAUP-AFT. On strike now. Thanks so much, Donna. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Of course.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, guys. We are going to wrap up now the first hour of this program, head into the fun half, where we will be taking your calls and reading your IMs. Although I just did that thing where I accidentally refreshed the IMs, so all of them are lost that you sent in the first hour. God darn it. Usually I'll have 2 tabs open just in case that happens, but it's like this Mac thing. If I swipe the wrong way on the damn pad, it goes to Bradley. It's like, I don't care. Anyway, so if you sent it IM, I'm sorry, it just got lost, but you can send it again.
Yeah, copy paste.
Yes. And the number is 646-257-3920. We will take your calls in the fun half, and I believe that Brandon will be back in studio joining us soon. We might have a bit of a extra fun half. I got Brandon some cider and myself some beer and some for Bradley as well, just because I can't drink on Friday because I'm doing this yoga thing in the afternoon. Can't drink before that. So this is our celebration for a long, hard week. We're going to be doing that in the fun half today. At least I am. But for ESVN, on Monday, we spoke at length about the NBA playoffs, looked at the odds for the NBA championship, and I advocated for a running back strike in order to get fair pay, because it's an actually pretty dire exploitative situation right now for NFL running backs, as well as a bunch of other topics like, John Rahm sticking it to the Saudi Golf League by winning the Masters. You can check that out at youtube.com/ESVN show. Bradley, can you speak for the illustrious Matt Leck and what's happening on Left Reckoning?
Yeah, so Matt and David on Tuesday had Paul Prescott on their program. Paul Prescott is a Jacobin contributor, Teamsters for a Democratic Union organizer, and former candidate for Pennsylvania State Senate, to talk about the legendary labor leader Tony Mazzocchi. And then they also spoke with Chip Gibbons, who is the policy director of Defending Rights and Dissent, to talk about the letter that led by Michigan Representative Rashida Tlaib, along with other squad Democrats, calling on the Biden administration to drop charges against Julian Assange. So if you want to check that out, youtube.com/leftreckoning and patreon.com/leftreckoning to access the post game.
All right. Well, check out Doomed, check out Scam Economy, check out The Discourse. We will see you in the fun half.
You are in for it. All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half. Oh, no. Oh, no.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
And the alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflakes has what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Denner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males,
psych, fuck them. Snowflake says what?
What?
Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keep it at 100.
Can't knock the hustle.
Come on, fuck them. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. We're letting Brandon into the studio now. We'll set up his shot. But for now, I'm going to read some IMs. Oh, but I got to say, I've already said hello to Matt Binder in private, but hello to the public. This is our friend, Matt Binder of Doomed and Scam Economy fame, and also Leftist Mafia as well. Hey, Brian Binder, what's up?
Not much. Glad to be here. This week on Doomed at youtube.com/Matt Binder and shortly up on podcast form at doomedcast.com and wherever you listen to podcasts. I spoke about, I basically broke down what happened between Matt Taibbi and Elon Musk regarding Substack and the Twitter files. And so check that out. A new Scam Economy episode will be coming out soon too. I'll let you know the details ASAP. And tonight, Leftist Mafia, I'm sure people will want to tune in.
What will you be talking about?
I'm sure people will want to tune in for that. I mean, I guess people can say there's a new leftist show that is a must watch.
I will say that
there's a new thing in progressive media, and it's called Leftist Mafia.
I will say, I hope this isn't too much of a, like, I'm not trying to, I was invited to come on by one of the people I won't say, and I just was like, I've had enough of my fill of this drama, but next week or next time I'll come on with you guys, right? So But yeah. I've talked about it at length. I just can't do it anymore.
I hear you completely. Yeah, I actually missed the whole thing because I took off a couple days this week because my kids are off from school, and I guess we'll talk about it tonight.